Are you in a new leadership role and you're struggling to stay connected with your team, or you want to start off on the right foot? In today's episode, we're going to answer that question and give you several tips to set you off on the right course.
Today's episode is critical for those who have just transitioned into a new leadership role. You might find yourself facing some different responsibilities and expectations and wondering how to form those strong relationships with your team and staying true to yourself. In today's episode, we'll discuss some key strategies on how to effectively communicate clear expectations and communicate clearly to your team.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a fun episode because a lot of us have either been in that situation, been on it a few times, but also are going to experience it at one time as well. Because this is a leadership podcast. If you are aspiring to be a leader, you're gonna get a lot of good information. If you are a current leader, hey, you're gonna continue to learn and find more opportunities for you to develop. But before we get started, Rich, I know that you just finished Aspiring Leadership. You're on your journey as a leader. How has your journey been so far?
Yeah, it's actually been great. And that class was exponentially helpful. I learned a lot of good, topics, red teaming, things like that. Obviously, that help out in that, just to build that foundation, right? It was amazing.
I don't know why I was just thinking about, you're probably at home and you're talking to your wife and you go, hold on, I want to red team
this. Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. You're like, well, I'm on my leadership course.
Exactly.
And she's like, Rich, hi, I like this.
Or she's like, no. What I say,
scratch
guys.
that, we're doing this.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. Well, again, I'm super proud of you, and I'm excited for you to start implementing the things that you learn. Definitely going to hold you accountable to that. But also we'll talk about it, and you're going to implement your learnings from it and what you've been applying. So again, super proud of you for doing that. Okay. And with that, today's episode, we also have a guest, someone who, again, I work closely with, but you work even closer with. So I think I'm going to give you the honors, introduce him.
Yes, please do. I asked you specifically.
I was just trying to make it sound organic, but yes, you did. You begged me.
So this guest is very near and dear to me, folks, and I'll tell you why, because she's a former leader of mine, none other than Jillian Viner. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Good. I was laughing. You're talking about red teaming because you and I would red team a lot, and I loved it. Inside one of our values is harmony, which is not always agreeing. It's actually being able to have productive discourse and bringing different ideas to the table. And you and I would do that all the time, and it was really, really effective, and I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. We grew a lot. I grew a lot anyway. Thank you for that. Thank you for being a great leader. Actually, before we jump into all of our topics today, the holiday season is upon us. Do you have any big holiday plans?
I am actually looking forward to being away for the holidays. My family lives in California. I'm in Arizona, so I love having the opportunity to work remotely so that I can spend quality time with my family and not skip a beat at work. I actually get to kind of cover so some of my teammates can take time off. So it's a good balance.
Very cool.
It's interesting. One of the things that I've been trying to really unpack and just really dive deep into is our time off, right? How a lot of times we take it off because it's a check the box. I have to. I don't want to, use it or lose it. But people don't really take that time and go, but what am I gonna do during this time off? How am I gonna take full advantage of it? And for yours, it's like connecting with family, right? Going back home or going back and really reconnecting. And this, I think, this time of the holiday season is a lot of us for us. We really enjoy those moments, and it's different for everybody. We assume, oh, you want to spend time. Some people don't I don't really care about spending time with family. Actually, I just want to go and enjoy a trip in the Bahamas or disconnect. You do what energizes you and what gives you joy to come back and be refreshed to just bring your best self again, right? So I love that you shared that. So thank you for that, Jillian. Now, my question for you and the question the audience are probably asking, well, who's Jillian? What does she do for Insight? So would you mind giving us a little bit of background about yourself, what you do, and then a little bit of your leadership journey?
Sure. I'll give you the Reader's Digest. I've been with Insight for 6 years. I started as a content specialist, moved up to a senior specialist doing content, really focused on brand and brand campaign was a big passion of mine. So I was really excited to see that area sort of grow at Insight and take advantage of any new opportunities. Hint, that's a really great way to discover leadership roles is to take on those stretch assignments. So I enjoyed that. Eventually, I became sort of a hybrid role for our brand campaign and moved into a team lead position. And then not too long after that was promoted to a manager. So it's been a fun ride. I've seen a lot of changes here at Insight, seen a lot of changes in myself. So it's been good.
I like how like a lot of times when you're in a team lead, it's kind of like that first entry into like management. And it seems like you're like, training wheels. Okay, you're good. Pushing you off. Right?
Yes, that's exactly what it felt like. I actually really appreciated that. Early in my career, I had the opportunity to manage people, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was still kind of fresh myself. I didn't have a lot of great, lessons or tools or even mentors to tell me what to do. And so having the opportunity to be a team lead really was like having training wheels. So by the time I got promoted to be a manager, I'm not going to say I was ready. I don't think anyone's ever really ready to be a manager, but I at least felt a lot more confident in making that transition when it did come.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anybody really is going to ever be ready, right? But, I love that you said the tool belt. At least now you have good tools that you can start leveraging and put into practice to make that transition a little bit easier. And I don't even want to say painless as possible, because sometimes there's some pretty, some growing pains when you go into leadership. Yeah. So what do we want to kick off with? What tips do we want to start off with?
Yeah. So what I want to know is actually, it's an interesting dynamic transitioning. You mentioned being on a team and then transitioning to a team lead and then to the actual leader. What does that look like in terms of, effectively communicating what your expectations are, to your team and making sure they know what those expectations are?
Sure. I was very fortunate, and this was kind of a unique situation, but maybe not that unique. I was a team lead, worked directly with, a counterpart. So he and I were the same level, right? And then when I became a manager, I became his manager. So our dynamic shifted. And I was very fortunate because he was very supportive of me, very celebratory to see me move up. So it was a very smooth transition, no roughness. He didn't kind of, didn't think it was weird that he now reported up to me. So it was a very amicable transition, which I really appreciated. Fast forward, a couple months later, team dynamics changed. That teammate has moved on. I got a new team. Rich came onto my team. I didn't hire you. You were actually hired to a different team, and then some shifting happened. You came to my team. So we didn't pick each other, but it worked out really well. And then our team grew really quickly. And it wasn't just that we were adding teammates. We were adding entirely new roles. And so I think one of the biggest challenges that I had, not only as a new leader, but just as an employee, is like, I have to bring these people on board and kind of figure out what exactly their roles are and get them comfortable in their roles. So that was a lot to navigate at one time, particularly having so many new teammates at one time. There was 5 of us at that point. So I think one thing that I could have done differently, hindsight's 2020, right? Is something that you talk about a lot, Z, is having my leadership philosophies. I think having my leadership philosophies established from the very get-go, so that when I brought somebody on and could show them kind of where my head was at, what my beliefs were, I think would have helped set a foundation. And, to another extent, I think there's some humility in sort of admitting to your team that, hey, I'm a new leader and I'm going to make mistakes. I really appreciate your feedback along the way. I know that you're new and you're trying to get your feet wet. Help me understand, what you need from me. And in fact, Z, there was a course that I took after I had been a leader, and it was about the S2 system. Am I going to say that right?
Situational leadership.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I came to you afterwards and I was like, oh my gosh, Z, I wish I had this course before I had this team. Because all throughout my career, I was kind of always in ambiguous roles, very much a self-starter, figure it out kind of person. Yep. And so when I had teammates who needed me to kind of spell things out and show them the way, I wasn't equipped for that, really. Like, it took a lot for me to realize that that's what they needed from me. So that class was like, I wish I had that beforehand. So I definitely recommend that.
And it's funny you say that, because we get that a lot, right? And finally, after hearing that feedback, and first of all, thank you for telling me that, and other leaders who also mentioned that, because that led us to taking action. And after, of course it happens, right? Like, after that, guess what? We made some changes. So we've actually implemented situational leadership in all aspects of our training moving forward. So an example, like career development, when we talk about career development now, we talk about, hey, as a teammate, as a person, you have development stages you go through. whether you thought that or not. And it's totally natural that you're going to come in super gun-ho. I can't wait to try that out. That looks fascinating. You were in D1 when we started.
Yep.
And then D2, we're doing the part. You're like, oh, this is so hard. I'm too rigid. It's becoming more. So teaching them the development stages early, so that way they can also help their leaders to say, hey, Jillian, I'm a total D2 territory right now. I'm struggling. I'm actually questioning if this is the right, role or task for me. Now you as a leader going, now I know what you need. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's just one example. We're doing it in the rest of our programs. We're implementing it in our leaders a lot sooner too. So thank you for that feedback, that we've actually taken action to say, hey, why do you have to wait till this program to get this? Like our leaders are needing this.
Yeah.
So
it was a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Back to the leadership philosophy. For those who don't know exactly what this is, maybe because we have listeners from all over that are not Insight. It's basically what you do is you combine and you think about what are my values, what do I believe in, how do I lead, so that way I can clearly articulate that to my team and show them, so they can see me as not just their manager, but as saying, hey, this is the way I process and think and make decisions, right, in my belief system. So that way, when it comes down to like, hey, I have this idea, or I want to run something by Jillian, by your philosophy, they already kind of know, oh, this is how she's going to respond, or I kind of have an idea how she's going to take lead in this, but I'll still bring it up, but now I can give her what she needs to make her successful. So it's kind of like it just opening the curtains a little bit about how, what goes on in your thoughts.
So Z kind of jumped the gun and answered my second question
of
how do you effectively make sure that your team knows what your expectations from them? And leadership philosophy will definitely hit on that to every number of degree. But I guess a follow-up question to that is, what do you do whenever you have a teammate that is not on board with those expectations? How do you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think ultimately, especially as a leader, you have to separate yourself from it. It's not about you. It's about the teammate. If they're not on board, there's something that you're not getting as a leader. And so you have to look at the situation a little bit differently and try to understand where they're coming from. Why are they having an issue with the goal or objective, what have you? And I think before that is taking the time to sit down and write out those goals, objectives. When we have teammates who join, we always start out with a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Yep. And as a leader, you have to take the accountability, put it in the calendar, and make time to go back and revisit that plan and make sure they're on track so that you're reminding them of those expectations. And honestly, it's a reminder for yourself, too, as a leader. Things happen. There's a lot that we're doing, right? The days go by quickly. So that should be always part of the conversation, and then as well as the one-on-ones. And I think another very important component that Z, you guys touch on all the time is the feedback loop. Yeah. That's another area that I think I wish I had done more of early on. I think we all say that. I try to encourage it still. It's an awkward practice. I think having it introduced to teammates so that it's a two-way street. It's not just the manager being aware of the feedback model and trying to implement it, but the teammate also understand how this works. Hey, Richard, do you have a minute? Can I give you some feedback?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so important to hear that.
He doesn't want to hear my feedback.
I absolutely
not.
Yeah. Okay, I thought we were past this.
And just to kind of continue with that, those are amazing tips because, a lot of times we take it personal, right? When somebody says I'm not on board or I don't, whatever, right? And then we talked about red teaming earlier. It's like they challenge, we right away get in defense mode instead of curiosity mode. Right. And that's not a good recipe when we're in defense mode, right? Because we shut down communication, really. I'm no longer listening. I'm going to tell you what to do and why we're doing it instead of, okay, interesting. Can you explain to me why that is?
That's a great tip. Yeah, it's not, oh my God, I can't believe what they just said to me. Why are they saying this to me? What do they mean by that?
Yeah. And then diving into that. And that happens, and you said in the one-on-ones and connections, or even just organically in a conversation, and be like, hey, you mentioned this and you said this isn't, you're not on board. Let's have a conversation and talk about it. Right, and kind of unpack it, figuring it out, because your point, it could be something personal in your life. It could be something that you're not seeing that now brings it to life, and now you're going, now we can work on it. Now we can work on it together instead of, just right away assuming bad intent. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're uncooperative, or they're not a team player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we've touched on a number of different things here. Huge shout out to all the leadership programs here. One very big thing is the empathy. You guys mentioned trying to understand from the other perspective. Why are they not on board with it? What exactly is keeping them from it? You touched on a little bit having a different leadership style as you were coming through your journey into growing into a leader, and how some of those have impacted you, and some of the things that have stuck with you, even though they might be some things that you want to overcome or change. Talk a little bit more about how you've, really shifted away from that and transitioned into your own field of leadership.
Oh, that's a big question. I think leadership, a lot like parenting, you're going to pick up lessons and skills and behaviors based on observation. You might learn money management from your parents. You're going to learn people management from previous managers. And sometimes we don't have the best role models, right? And you may not even realize what you're doing until, you maybe have a bad moment or a bad day or something to kind of figure that out. I think what's helped me over time is, number one, leveraging that feedback loop. And that's hard. It's very hard. The other thing that Insight does, I think, is really wonderful is an anonymous 360 survey. I'm actually doing that right now. I'm a little nervous about it, but it's helpful, right? Because you don't know what you need to fix until you are told what you need to work on. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think, again, having some humility, and you're going to make a mistake, whether you're a new leader or an experienced leader, you're going to make a mistake. And as long as you own it, I'll give you an example. I had a teammate who sent off an email or something, and I totally had a knee-jerk reaction to it. And then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm sorry. I overreacted to that. I know that you're doing your best, and you were on top of this, and you were demonstrating you're on top of this. Yeah. I overreacted. Please, forgive me for that. And brush it up, no big deal. And I think there's respect in that. I know that I've always respected leaders who are able to come to me and say, I made a mistake. So that's what I've just tried to do. And again, using that S2 model, like recognizing when people move on to a different stage and kind of learning now when to back off, when to just let them figure it out. I know that you've talked about this with other leaders. Like, one of the hardest parts about transitioning to a leadership role is giving up control. Things are not going to go the way that you maybe would have done them, said them, what have you. And you just have to let it go. You have to let somebody else do it their own way. Yeah. So.
And I'll be honest with you, the more you do it, it becomes easier, but there will be tasks or things that you really hold close or you created, right? Like, I started it from scratch, or I built it. To then pass it on, it's going to always be challenging. Mm-hmm. Right? But once you do, it allows you to then create something else new and start something new. But also, the awesome thing is that somebody else will take it and even make it better, which is even amazing. Like, I have tons of examples of that happening. Yeah. Let me follow up on what we said previously, because I think this is something that a lot of new leaders struggle with. So your example turned out great, right? That you had a peer, kind of had that mutual respect. You ended up getting the role, kind of already seeing you as a leader. But there are going to be times, when maybe you think you have a good relationship with somebody and they will catch you off. I have had this happen to me a few times, where you think that you're going for the same role and you have that conversation. And by the way, have that conversation. We're both going for the same role. Hey, we're going to, support each other. We're going to, do what we can. Whoever gets it, the best person gets it, right? Let's say you have that conversation. We're human. Unexpected things happen. I've had situations where, I got the role and they didn't, and then that relationship completely changed, right? Even though we had that, you're just like, what is going on? So at the same time, like, don't take it personal as well, right? That they're whatever the reasoning is, but set the expectation. This is what's, have that conversation initially, and then just go from there, right? Hey, things are going to change. When we're at work, I have to treat everybody the same. It's an even playing field. Just kind of set those bars. And outside of work, we can still be friends, but at the same time at work, it's not going to be the same dynamic. And unfortunately, for my scenario, it just that relationship broke off. But it happens, right? And those aren't always pretty, but stick to your ground. Do not show favoritism, because that's the struggle. Once you go and they're like, oh, they're buddies, they're close friend, they're showing that, you can't have that. Because it's gonna be a tough challenge to deal with. So I decided there is that other side too, and it's gonna be tough.
Yeah. Yeah, navigating those challenges can be extremely tough. But one key thing I want to pull out of this and what Jillian has mentioned thus far is leading through vulnerability. I think that brings your authentic self, and that really goes a long way with your team, especially as a new leader. Just being authentic and not saying that you maybe don't know all the answers, but you're going to figure them out, and you're there to lead your team in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's a great way to build trust, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So let's transition to the next part. So I think we said, set clear expectations. Like, you're going to learn along the way. It's not going to be perfect. Don't try to be like, I have to have the perfect onboarding experience and be the best leader. It's like, you're going to have hiccups. You're going to make mistakes, but learn from it, adapt, learn. But next phase is like, how do you build a culture of learning within your team? Because, we know by this podcast and all of us believe in that. But how do you instill that in your team? Because there's going to be some teammates who maybe come from a different culture, a different organization that didn't have that. And I don't know if you've encountered that yet. If you have, that'd be awesome to learn. But how do you start building that culture within your team and say, hey, develop yourself? Like, let's continue learning as a team instead of just being stagnant.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of little things you can do, I think. First, you asked me a question. I'm going to say, that's a great question. You both just smiled. How great does that feel, right? When you ask a question and someone says, that's a great question.
I know.
Giant
we need to
smiles.
practice.
So I think just having that quick encouragement, that already, like, you've now given me permission to ask questions. So I think that goes just so far, so long. I think the other part is not shooting down ideas, even if you know immediately that it's a bad idea or it's not going to work. We do encounter this, especially with younger teammates, maybe new in their careers, and you don't want to quash that enthusiasm, right? Like, you hired them because they're fresh and new and they have all that spark and jazz and inspiration in their eyes. Let them bring their ideas forward. Let them bring it to a point where you're going to help them, right? You're not going to have them waste their time on something, but let them try. Let them figure out why this won't work or where it might fail. So I think that's a really important part, is just not speaking up when you know something's not going to work, right?
It's like a balance,
right? It is.
Said, right? Like encourage them, but also then step back and let them go, right? Even though you want to jump and be like, yeah, we tried that. Didn't go so well.
Red team the heck out of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is an effective tool too, especially if you've got a diverse team of new people, old people, not old people, older people, established people. Yeah. Thank you.
Veterans.
You can kind of let your team do a little bit of that work for you. I think we were very fortunate because Rich, our team, was super supportive and very diverse. Very diverse, actually. So many different backgrounds, personalities, skill sets, and everybody just was always full of harmony and collaborative and very supportive of each other. So I think that really helped. But as a leader, I think just, again, giving people the room and the space to feel good about bringing an idea to the table, even if it's going to ultimately get shut down, you're at least giving them some room to think it's got some life.
Yeah. No, building
and
that
they might
trust
surprise
with
you.
That rapport, you're allowing them to, maybe this time it won't be accepted, but next time something will come, will be accepted, or we'll be like, that's amazing. That's a game changer. You just saved us time, money, effort, all that.
Yeah. We have a test and learn culture, especially in marketing. So it's very rare that we're going to hear an idea and not at least try it.
Yeah. Cool. I like that.
Testing is definitely key. Always be testing.
So I know we have, just our final question, because I figure we just move to the third one. I think that one's going to take some time to unpack, because a lot of us kind of deal with that, right?
Yeah. So this one's hits a little bit deeper, especially for new leadership, right? So there's a thing called impostor syndrome, and a lot of people get in their heads about this. So what has been your experience with imposter syndrome, or maybe just having that negative self-talk, especially when you first transition into new leadership? How do you overcome those challenges, and what have you done to kind of navigate yourself around that?
First of all, I think if you're a new leader or any leader and you don't experience imposter syndrome, you probably shouldn't be a leader. That's just the truth of it. If you don't have a speckle of doubt, you probably have too much ego and need to step aside. So
Mic drop.
Yeah, I'll leave it there. I think imposter syndrome is normal. It's expected. It's probably in some ways healthy. To a point. It's okay to doubt your decisions, your interactions. If you feel yourself start to spiral, though, which probably will happen, it certainly happened to me on more than one occasion, that's when you have to turn to your people, either your direct manager, your mentors, other peers. And even in that moment where you start to feel yourself spiral, I like this trip from Mel Robbins where you count backwards from 5 and it just, you take control of that situation. So if you start spiraling back and you just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I was chosen for a reason. They picked me for a reason. They put me in this position for a reason. They saw something in me. So that's it. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And again, whatever that's a nice with that technique, and there's several other ones. Just kind of just grounds you again, or just brings you back to reality, because our mind can spiral and take us so many different directions and very unhealthy directions. One of the techniques that I've read in a book called Soundtracks, which I love. Soundtracks is music. You have the soundtrack, or I don't know if you relate to this, but when you're gonna go in for an interview or something, when you need to get pumped up, you have your soundtrack.
Oh, I'm picturing Dwight Schrute in the car jamming out. Are you guys Office fans?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's doing his thing.
Yeah. So we have those soundtracks, right? We're going to a different event or whatever. We put it on and get us in that zone. The same thing when it comes to again, imposter syndrome. When we find ourselves getting into that, why do they want to listen to me? Or why do they want to? Why do they want me to? Why would they want me to lead them? Right? Am I the right person? What have you? Switch the soundtrack. And get into that, like, yeah, no, I'm meant to be here. I belong here. And then 3 words that you can ask yourself is just, first of all, is this true? Is this fact? What I'm thinking, is this really fact? Well, most likely it's probably not, right? So this is speculation. Second one, is it kind to yourself? Are you being kind to yourself, right? So just kind of checking in with yourself, and the counting downward, just a lot of things, but just don't check with yourself.
Yeah. It's really easy to come out of all of those leadership courses and you finish a really good book and you're like, oh, I got this. I got all the answers, all the tools. It's so different when you're actually in the moment. You're dealing with different personalities, different levels of experience.
Yeah.
One of the other challenges I think that I had from our, leader, I hate to say direct report. I wish there was a different way to say that, but
a partnership.
A partnership, right? You're a paid media specialist. I have a content background. I know like zilch about your field of expertise. And so that kind of adds another layer of, talking about clarifying expectations, or like how far I can help you. There's some extra pressure on me as the leader to educate myself to a point. I'm never going to know as much about paid media as you. That's where the trust comes in. That's where you hire people who are smarter than you to do a job that you can't do. So, but it does sort of feed into the imposter syndrome, because there's a point where like your knowledge is beyond mine and I just have to focus on the other areas that I can help, like copywriting background, communication. That's where I thrive. So the data, the strategies, let me help you or coach you on the communication part of it. And I think that's where you have to lean on, is understanding your strengths and strategies in contrast to the people that you're leading.
Yeah. Back to that humility, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. So we've learned a lot of key strategies, folks, and from a leader who is thriving in her leadership. So thank you so much, Jillian. We really appreciate the time and all of your knowledge that you've shared with us today.
You guys are making me blush. Stop it.
So, we always like to wrap up with like, hey, what's our final thoughts, or what are our biggest takeaway? For me, the biggest takeaway is that, a lot of times we're never going to be ready for going into a leadership role. As many times as, and that could be even what's hesitating a lot of us, that have that opportunity. Like, I'm not ready. I don't have enough experience, knowledge. That imposter syndrome starts kicking in as well, to hesitate that. Hey, it's never you're always going to find excuses not to jump into that role or not to take that opportunity. Hey, learn, have a learning mindset, set good expectations, build a good relationship with your team, and be able to add those tools to your tool belt. That was my biggest takeaway. I love that you said that. It's like, hey, as long as you have those tools and you know where to get them and where to find them and start implementing them, you're in good shape. More than a lot of people that didn't have them, when a lot of us come in when we didn't have them, and how that worked out. So
yeah.
What was yours?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is leading through authenticity, right? That humility, just being vulnerable to say, hey, I might not know this, I might be new at this, but we're going to get there, and we're going to get there together. That builds the trust, huge foundational piece to leadership, especially when building your team and, just developing everybody overall. So that's really what stuck with me.
Awesome.
Can I just say one last thing?
No, you're done.
No,
Yeah.
no, no,
We're
no.
gonna start your spark.
I was gonna say Spark
Oh.
because I obviously had the pleasure of leading Richard. I don't lead him anymore, but I knew that there was sort of a piece of his work that wasn't giving him full fulfillment. And ever since he started working with you, Z, and kind of doing this podcast from this, like, you have that spark, and it's so wonderful to see. And that's what all of us as leaders always want to see in our people is it's about your development and you finding the thing that makes you feel excited to come to work, excited and fulfilled. So it's really fun to watch you really grow in this whole new area.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yes, I'm super energized by this. So thank you. And with that, folks, we appreciate all of you tuning in today. Definitely check us out on all of the podcast streaming platforms, anywhere you can find any podcast streaming. Obviously, also on YouTube as well. Leading with Insight, be sure to check us out there. You can actually watch the live recording. And with that, folks, until next time.